Coming up on this episode of DL Weekly, new seating options in Avengers Campus. The Disney Channel takes over Disneyland. Josh's first month is a little bumpy.
A new art installation celebrates the 70th anniversary at Downtown Disney. We continue our talk with Kevin Rafferty about his time at Imagineering and more. DL Weekly starts now.
Buenos dias, señorita. My siestas are getting shorter and shorter. Oh, look at all the people listening. Welcome to DL Weekly's Enchanted Podcast. Hey, Tag and Teresa, mi amigos. Pay attention, it's showtime.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of DL Weekly for the week of April 15th, 2026. I'm Tag Bushman.
And I'm Teresa Urban. We would like to thank everyone who supports the show, but this week we would like to give a special shout out to Dave VC, Josh W, Kim G, and Joy W. If you would like to help support the show and get ad-free versions of each episode, access to our supporter-only chat, plus a bunch of other fun perks, head on over to dlweekly.net/support and become an official weekly tier.
Now let's get to the news.
Extra, extra, read all about it. DL Weekly reports from intrepid correspondents Tag and Teresa. You heard it here first, ladies and gents. Breaking news!
Well, some more seating has been added to Avengers Campus at Disney California Adventure. The former Fast Pass distribution area has been converted into a seating area with covered tables and themed elements making it fit right in with the theming of the area. More seating is always a good thing, especially in Avengers Campus where shade is a premium.
So, two things that caught my attention with this. A, take a look at the link in the show notes here because there are all sorts of wonderful photos that Laughing Place took. This space is way bigger than I would have thought it was. They kind of went back past where the Fast Pass distribution space was and went more towards the animation building than had been before. So it opened way up because when we were first reporting on this, Mice Chat had a sneaky suspicion wondering if this was going to be some sort of food service location. Other reports were saying that it was going to be seating. It's amazing to me how much space and seats they added because when I was thinking of what that area was, I'm like, well, they're going to be able to put maybe 4 tables over there because I was thinking of what the current little space was, but this is huge. It's very large, so that's awesome. But the thing that makes me really excited, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, but bear with me. Where did we have expanded seating in Avengers Campus?
What do you mean, where did we have it?
Where did they used to have extra seating? They used to have it.
Oh, by the Hyperion?
Yes, in the Hyperion, where you had, in the good old days, when there used to be shows in the theater, where you would line up before you would then be able to go inside the theater. So this is giving me hope, perhaps false hope. Tag is shaking his head at me right now, that maybe this could be a sign. Let's not have that be a temporary seating area anymore. And, you're kind of freeing that space up. And the thing that's awesome about this new space too, shade. There looks to be tons and tons of shade.
I do not want what you are wishing for.
I know.
I just do not think it's happening. Now, I just pulled up the street view of this area before because I was trying to figure out, I thought I had seen that this area was partially backstage. Some of this area was partially backstage. And when I look, there was some trees here. So rest in peace, some trees.
Oh, no.
Hashtag save trees as trees. There was, looking from the view here, there was at least 3, maybe 4 trees that are no longer there.
Oh.
So sorry about that, Teresa, because I know how important
this was a win. Now we've taken a few steps back.
Yeah. But that's all that kind of was in that area. And now they've been able to kind of reclaim a little bit of backstage and some foliage area, and now we have some nice seating. So
it does look like they've planted some trees, or maybe we're able to save some trees because there are some trees in the seating area as well.
So
they're not all gone, thankfully.
They're just smaller, and that's okay.
I'm still just baffled at how big this space ended up being. Just crazy. So for those of you, if you're looking at either the photos online or if you go there in person, the Fast Pass distribution area was the tanned column shaded space that's kind of the entrance of this new seating area. That's what it used to be. So everything past that towards the animation building is all brand new territory just for this. I need to say something real quick with new seating areas. So, of course, we have the new seating area over in Cars Land, right? I saw something online. It's back behind the Cozy Cones. I saw something online, and now I need to go, like, see this for my own eyes. There is a little, it's not a hidden Mickey. What it is, it's a hidden ladybug. So it's like a little tiny Volkswagen Beetle painted like a ladybug that's crawling on the trellis back in there. And I think that is such a fun, cute detail. Someone shared it on like Instagram or something. And I am obsessed. I will have to try and find a photo so that we can share it with everyone.
You know, that could also be a throwback for Francis's Ladybug Boogie there.
Yes, I thought, what a perfect thing in Bugs Land is to have a little bug crawling that's a little Volkswagen Beetle bug. And yes, throwback to a Bugs Land as well, even though a Bugs Land wasn't, that area where that shaded area is, because it's across from Luigi's. So that didn't used to be Bugs Land, but it's close enough to where Bugs Land used to be.
It's adjacent, if nothing else.
I will try and find the picture and share it with you and share it with the listeners.
Sure. Oh, that's so small.
Isn't that awesome?
I was thinking something else. That is tiny, but I like it. Yeah, that's cute.
I love it. Even has like the little like track marks, like it crawling up there. We will put this link in the show notes so you guys can see it as well. Already there. I got it. So everybody needs to know about this. I think it's so stinking adorable. That's like that is on my list now. Next time I'm in the parks, I need to go see this with my own two eyeballs.
And hopefully somebody hasn't like torn it off of the trellis.
I hope not. Yeah, I hope not. Don't do that. Don't do that. Well, a new art installation is being unveiled throughout the month in downtown Disney to celebrate the 70th anniversary of Disneyland. Artists were asked to pick a Walt Disney quote and create a piece of art inspired by that quote. Each piece will represent one of the decades of the Disneyland Resort. So far, only the 50s through the 80s is represented, with more coming as more artists are adding to the collection through live art demonstrations.
This is kind of cute. I like this idea that they have. It's kind of like these like privacy shade kind of almost things, but bigger. Like you could put these big art poster size, like Disneyland attraction poster under the train track size graphics on it. And on one side, you have things like, for example, the 1950s one has Fantasyland, and it says ideas come from curiosity. And it's got a picture of the castle, and you can see the carousel through it, and Dumbo flying, and a pirate ship flying and stuff like that. For the 1960s, you've got It's Kind of Fun to Do the Impossible, and you've got Pirates of the Caribbean, and It's a Small World, and Tiki Room, and Haunted Mansion. So you get all types of neat little things there, and they're just going to keep adding because we've only gotten up to the 80s, and there's many more years after that.
I just think this is such a fun idea. I'm curious what, like, if they're going to just kind of be, right now they look like they're just kind of like set out sporadically. And again, this is down by like the Disneyland Hotel, down by Din Tai Fung, down by the old ESPN. Oh no, I can't call it the old ESPN zone anymore because it is now Lululemon. Down by Lululemon, down on that end of the park. And they just kind of have just kind of spaced out. So I'm curious if once they're all out, if they're all just kind of going to be sporadically placed and like separated out like this, or if they're all going to connect at one point.
I think my favorite one. And this is great because it has not only my favorite attraction in it, but it also has James's favorite attraction in it. So this would be a great piece of art to have at our house. Is from the 1970s. It's got Space Mountain and Big Thunder, and the steam from Big Thunder has the Main Street Electrical Parade in it. So look, it's even got something that you really love.
It does. Elliot's even there. See him? He's in the back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I think this is really cool. The 1980s one is also kind of neat. It definitely feels very 80s,
Yes,
80s vibed. Yeah, this is cool. Like, I hope that somehow we'll be able to purchase these, maybe at an art on demand or something, because I would buy some of this art.
Yeah, or Wonderground. Maybe Wonderground will have some of these as prints. They're very interesting, and each style of piece is also quite different and very, very fitting, to whatever it is. That 80s one, though, man, that is like hitting the nail on the head with the 80s vibes, though.
Definitely. Well, it is a slightly bumpy start to Josh D'Amaro's tenure as Disney's new CEO. The company is planning on cutting up to 1,000 jobs, mostly in the marketing division, which was recently consolidated. It is likely that these cuts were already planned before D'Amaro took over from Bob Iger last month.
Yeah, so while we never want to hear the words layoffs, because those, these 1,000 people, yes, there are 1,000 jobs, but it's also 1,000 people that were creating magic in one way or another. And specifically here, it was with marketing. And it's just sad. And our hearts go out to those that are affected by this. I feel you're right, Tag. It's a lot of people maybe pointing the finger at Josh. He hasn't been in the role long enough. It hasn't even been, as we record this, it hasn't even been a month yet. So I really, really doubt that this was, quote unquote, his doing. Unfortunately, he is the one that is the CEO when it's planned to happen. But it's just really unfortunate. But it just sounds like they've been trying to do some realigning. And so I feel like this is just part of the realignments, because when Josh took over, it kind of set up this like domino effect of leadership changes. So we had Dana Walden, that was named president and chief creative officer, which of course was a brand new position. Alan Bergman became the Disney Entertainment chairman. He was previously co-chair with Dana. Thomas Mausoleum, our friend over from the Disneyland Resort, replaced Josh and is now the Parks and Experiences chairman. Jill Estoriano replaced Thomas as Disneyland president. Tasia Filipatos replaced Jill at Disney Parks International. And Lisa. So there was kind of this trickle-down effect, which what they're trying to do is, what I think they're trying to do, this is just me talking and has no actual knowledge of the Disney, of Disney corporate. I think what they're trying to do is make things make more sense, because under Iger, they accumulated and brought in a lot of different companies. Well, really, now that all those companies are under the same umbrella, a lot of the positions, I'm sure, were a little, I don't want to say redundant, but maybe had a lot of overlap. And so there just wasn't as much needed as when these were all individual entities. So I'm thinking that they're trying to just make things make more sense, make things be a little bit more streamlined, instead of having a bunch of different pieces in separate piles, and make it one full puzzle, if that makes any sense.
The thing that I totally agree with you. I think that why have duplication of efforts, and you got to have like a good, well-oiled machine. And I think having too much overlap and redundancy and stuff does not do that. It kind of creates more issues than it solves. But the other thing I've been seeing that I don't think is deserved here is immediately so many sites I saw online are jumping on, Josh D'Amaro, he's doing all these terrible things and all this stuff is happening, and everybody thought he was going to be great and he just sucks. And it's like, oh, come on, hold on, everybody. Like, it's been as we record this, not even a month of full-time him being the CEO. You got to give him time. Like, stuff doesn't change overnight. Like Teresa was saying, you got to wait and see how things go. You can't judge his entire CEO-ship based off of less than 1 month of stuff that's going on. Plus, there's a lot of things going on in the world right now. There's a lot of different things happening that are impacting other things and whatever. So I think we need to give him a chance. We need to see how things go for at least a year before we're like, oh, nope, he's just more of the same. We might as well just kept Iger some more or whatever. So I think give him a chance. I don't think it's fair for people to be judging him so harshly so soon.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I feel this is maybe not the best parallel to draw, but this feels a little familiar, because when Bob Chapek came in, a lot of blame was put on him and some of the things that happened early in his time as CEO. And that's just, the business world doesn't move that fast. So there's things that were already well in motion prior to these people coming into their new roles that maybe they really had no control over stopping. And changing course. Maybe they did. We don't know. But I don't think that they were the sole catalyst, if you will. So I don't think it's very fair to blame just that one single person who's brand new to the role. So let's give them time. I'm still hopeful.
And I think we said the same exact thing when Chapek took over, and everybody was starting to blame him for Genie Plus and Lightning Lane. And we're like, no. Well, you were a big advocate of saying, like, hold on, everybody. This was announced under Iger. This was not. So, yes, I think, like you said, it just takes time. Like, the business world is not, it takes time. Everything takes time.
Well, this past weekend, the first Disneyland After Dark Disney Channel night was held at Disneyland. Photo ops were set up for guests to take pictures themed to Disney Channel original movies, aka DCOMs, like Johnny Tsunami and Xenon, the super duper fan favorite, which allowed guests to recreate the Disney Channel wand ID. So, you know, if you ever watch the Disney Channel, they would draw the Mickey silhouette with their blue wand. That little experience and photo op was back. The Descend Dance Party was also back, along with favorite Disney Channel characters including Tailspin, Lilo and Stitch, the series, and more. Penny Proud from the Proud family was new this year. Also new this year was an exhibit at the Starcade in Tomorrowland that featured Disney Channel artifacts from the Walt Disney Archives. Of course, there was no shortage of merchandise or treats.
So there was kind of a good mix of old and new here. People seem to really enjoy the last couple times, because isn't this like the third time? Maybe this is just the second time.
At least
but I remember,
second, yeah.
I remember that the last time they had this, people were very excited and they thought it was a good After Dark night. So having all of these different things, there was also some photo ops of like Camp Rock and Wizards of Waverly Place. So a bunch of different things. It does look like they did the Disney Channel wand ID location was put in a little bit better, maybe not better of a spot, but a different spot. Because when I remember seeing this before, this was like right on Main Street, like in Town Square. Yeah,
it was in Town Square last year. And that line was, I don't think they thought it was going to be as popular as it was.
Oh, come on. How could it not be popular?
I know.
Yeah, so the Descendants Dance Party looked cool. Of course, characters you don't usually get to see in the park. I was a big fan growing up of Tailspin, and they had all the Tailspin folks there. So lots of great options, a couple new things. And then Teresa, I'm sure you feel the same way. The archives being there, that was cool.
I know. That was worth admission itself, I'm sure, for a lot of fans. Because how many people thought that they'd be that up close to different things. I'm seeing stuff from Camp Rock, High School Musical, Hannah Montana, which of course is celebrating a milestone anniversary this year too, but different outfits. There's lots of different, actually I see like 2 guitars. There's of course trophies that are from High School Musical. So yeah, just how stinking cool.
Yeah. Seemed like it was another great After Dark night. So did I see, were tickets still available for like the next one? Or I guess I should.
If they are still, I'm sure after all this coverage, they're not going to be. Because now people know what it is. I think, and I get it. If I was local, I think at some point, you know, with all the different After Dark and like nighttime ticketed events that they have, there's just so many, you know, it's hard to be able to go to all of them. So you kind of have to pick and choose which ones you're doing each year. The ticket prices obviously add up too, so I get it. And especially these ones that maybe were repeats. So if you did it last year, maybe you're not feeling the same pull to do it again this year. But I do think it's really neat that they, like you said, have a nice blend of favorites from the past plus a mix of fun new things for guests to experience as well.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
I am the podcast that flaps in the night. I am the churro crumb in your meticulously planned itinerary. I
am DLWeekly.
Well, this week for SnackChat, we are continuing our tour. I looked back, and we were kind of heading into the Disneyland Hotel, and then, or at the end of Downtown Disney, and then suddenly we had all these foodie guides, and then we had the coffee shop, and then a couple more foodie guides, and now we are finally back. And this time we're talking about Goofy's Kitchen.
I still have yet to go experience Goofy's Kitchen, but I've heard wonderful things from people that have gone. It's a very fun, goofy, if you will, experience that is, of course, filled with different characters. The Big Goof himself is there along with some of our other friends. But they're open for breakfast, brunch, and dinner. Now, this is a buffet, so we can kind of just talk about some of the things that you may find and enjoy as much as you care to enjoy while you're there. So they do have different themes. So there's just kind of the generic, everyday thing. But right now they have a Celebrate Springtime breakfast happening. It's a little bit more expensive than the standard, but you get a couple of different things to enjoy on the buffet line. Plus the characters are usually in fancy outfits as well. But just the regular breakfast buffet, you can expect fresh fruit and berries, build your own yogurt parfait, scrambled eggs, Goofy's signature peanut butter and jelly pizza. There's Mickey waffles along with Mickey pancakes, cereal, mini breakfast pastries, build your own omelet stations, French toast sticks, and of course, sausage and bacon.
I feel like I should know about this peanut butter and jelly pizza, but I did not know about this.
Honestly, one of the reasons that I want to try Goofy's is just because of the peanut butter and jelly pizza. I feel like it'd be good. Obviously, there's no marinara sauce on it. It's more of a dessert pizza.
So
I feel
this
like it'd be
is totally only applies to me and Teresa for the most part. Did you ever eat at Pizza Doctor's downtown?
Yes. So
didn't they have one of these?
They used to do what was called exploratory surgery for pizzas. So there was this funky themed pizza buffet restaurant here in La Crosse, Wisconsin. It is no longer here, but it was called Pizza Doctors. And they had, I don't think it was every day. I think it was only certain days they had what they called exploratory surgery. And it was all sorts of different, unique pizzas, we'll say. Don't ask me what they used to be, but there was stuff that you wouldn't find, not typical stuff, maybe a macaroni and cheese pizza or a peanut butter and jelly pizza, stuff like that, s'mores pizzas, whatever. They may have had a peanut butter and jelly pizza. I'm not sure.
I feel like I've seen this somewhere now that I saw I Google image searched Goofy's Pizza and I was like, okay, I think I've seen something like this before, but
it
sounds like it'd be yummy.
But was it made by the Goof?
No, of course not. So obviously that's going to taste different.
Tell us about brunch.
For their brunch, some of their items that they partial listing, because obviously they swap things out and obviously things are subject to change, but they have breakfast pastries, assorted sliced fruits and berries, build your own salad bar, scrambled eggs, breakfast sausage and bacon, Goofy's signature peanut butter jelly pizza, so you can still get that for brunch, omelet eggs to order, seasonal deviled eggs, mini bagels, danishes, croissants, and muffins, assorted seasonal salads, French toast sticks, Mickey waffles and Mickey pancakes, breakfast pizza, and a carving station. So quite a bit going on there.
Yeah, you got to bring your appetite to brunch, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And then there's also dinner, which adds, we've got still the fresh fruits, still the seasonal salads. There's a bread basket, of course, can't get away from that signature peanut butter and jelly pizza of Goofy's. That's there too. But you can also check out some chicken tenders, garlic mashed potatoes, sauteed vegetables, assortment of seasonal desserts and baked goods.
They have some artisan pizza selections, a cheese board and vegetable crudité of vegetables and ranch. There's a mac and cheese, French fries, rice, a carving station, and a vanilla and chocolate soft serve ice cream. That sounds good.
So the prices do vary depending on what mealtime you're going to. So breakfast starts at $36 per child, and it's $59 per adult for the standard, and then that goes from $39 to $69 for the special springtime breakfast. Brunch looks like $36 to $64, and then dinner is $69 per adult. So it is an experience. You do have to bring your appetite with these price points, but if you're looking for a fun character dining option, this is a great one to go check out over at the Disneyland Hotel.
Yeah, character dining, obviously part of the price is the character dining, so you don't have to spend a ton of time in the park waiting for characters. And like Teresa said earlier, you sometimes get them in really unique outfits that you can't get anywhere else. Plus, Goofy's Kitchen, that's not the one that has like the big windows that they do the wedding stuff at. That's something different, right? At the Disneyland Hotel.
Oh, that's above Goofy's Kitchen.
Okay. I knew Goofy's Kitchen was right there.
Yep, it's near that. Yeah, that's above. There's what Tag's talking about is there is an event space that's often used for Disney fairy tale weddings, or you can rent it for, whatever other event that you want to host at the Disneyland Hotel that has, these wonderful giant windows. It's kind of a circular room, and it looks like out onto the pool area there. But yeah, Goofy's is, I think it's just below that.
I think so too.
Maybe if you have your event, Goofy will bring up some of that famous peanut butter and jelly pizza for you to try.
Who needs a wedding cake when you could have Goofy peanut butter and jelly
have that
pizza?
Too funny.
Well, it is that time again for our friend Eric over at Concierge to catch us up on other Disney news.
Hello, everyone. This is Eric Johnson with Concierge, and welcome to the D180. While Teg and Teresa cover all things Disneyland, in the D180, we take a spin around the rest of the Disney universe, and we do it in 180 seconds. So let's jump right in. We begin our trip this week with deals. Yep, Disney is practically giving away rooms this year, and it's high time you booked yourself some of these trips. First off, Disney Plus member perks continue to pay off at Walt Disney World. There are some amazing rates this summer at many of the Disney Resort hotels. Depending on your time frame, you can get a room as low as $99 per night at the All-Star Sports Resort. I haven't seen a price like that in years. Port Orleans Riverside, an excellent family destination, is just $169 per night. And if you ever wanted to stay in a safari room at Disney's Animal Kingdom Resort, we're starting at $369 per night. That is a deluxe resort, my friends. I have to tell you, I have only visited that resort for one night in the past, and it's still one of my most memorable visits to the parks. Where else can you wake up, pour a cup of coffee, and watch giraffes eat their breakfast? For a somewhat different experience, head to Aulani. From August 9th to October 18th, you can stay for 5 nights with up to 25% off. This includes the ocean view rooms. This isn't just parking lot views. I mean, this is great. This is your chance to bask in the late summer sun and enjoy one of the most relaxing destinations in the Hawaiian Islands. And hey, I have spoken plenty about the National Geographic expeditions of late. How about you set up a trip within the next few months and save up to $500 per person? That's right, trips in North America are $400 off per person, and those abroad are $500 off per person. These are guided tours. They're educational. They're incredible experiences you're unlikely to see on your own. And if you are able to go with this short period of time, this summer, and if you want a somewhat different deal, again, you know what? You could take 50% off of your folks who are 18 and under. Treat your graduate, treat the grandkids, treat your neighbor's kids, or just go for yourself. Treat yourself. This is a great time of year to be taking a National Geographic trip. For details on the variety of experiences you can experience, reach out to your favorite concierge and get those details. I hope you enjoyed our quick spin around the rest of the Disney universe. If you would like to learn more about these Disney adventures or just have a few questions, please come on over. Visit the social media and websites of both DLWeekly and Concierge. Then message your expert travel planners at Concierge. They look forward to planning something special for you and yours. I'm Eric Johnson, and this has been your D180.
Thanks, Eric.
Pilots,
We've detected some producer questions near Jakku. Report to your DLWeekly vessels and make the jump to hyperspace. The 7-7 Squadron will provide support during your trivia mission. Good luck, and may the Force be with you.
Welcome to Trivia Land, where we have some awesome listeners with some awesome questions. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm looking at some new names here that I haven't seen before, so that makes them even more awesome. Thank you so much for these listener-submitted questions. Tag and Teresa, are you feeling like you've got just the best brains for the best answers tonight?
You're really putting us up there.
Yeah. I was like, I was feeling excited until you said, do we have the best brains for the best answers?
Because I have faith in you. And you should have faith in you, too.
I was just excited that we have some new submissions and new listeners submitting questions. That's always exciting.
Because we've got great listeners.
There's hope that they're going to be very nice, Tag.
I did see the email today. We don't get the questions, just to be clear, but I do get a summary email that tells me how many submissions went through the form, and I did see that we had 5 submissions this week.
Nice.
Awesome.
Well, thank you very much, listeners. We do appreciate you. Let's get to it. From listener Keith N. In what novel was Toontown first mentioned?
Novel?
A novel first mentioned Toontown before there was a movie and before there was a Toontown in the park.
Was Roger Rabbit a novel?
I don't know. I'm going to say Roger Rabbit.
Yeah,
Who Framed
that's
Roger
what I'm
Rabbit?
gonna
Because that's
say,
the
too.
only thing I can think of.
Roger Rabbit is in the title of the novel. Can you tell me a little more?
It's not Who Framed Roger Rabbit, is it?
Do you think the movie
I'm going to say Who
is
Framed
the
Roger
same?
Rabbit.
Who Framed?
I don't know. I'm giving you what I got.
I'm going to go with that, too, because I don't know anything else.
All right, Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Final answer.
Yeah.
Excellent. Our second question from listener Serena K. What century has the most headstone representation at the Haunted Mansion?
Oh, I'm going to say the 1800s.
Ooh, see, I was thinking about 1800s as well. But something is thinking like early. No, I'm going to stick with 1800s as well.
Both of you saying 1800s. Going to lock that in. Your third
Lock it in our crypts.
Oh.
I don't know. That was not very good. Tag's just shaking his head.
Your third listener submitted question from listener Christy H. The Party Gras Parade was featured for which Disneyland anniversary?
This was... Oh, no.
I don't know. I'm going to say 40.
It was in the 90s because I remember seeing it. Was it the... I'm going to say the 35th anniversary. I think is what it was.
So we're splitting the team. We
Yeah.
got 40th and 35th. Final answer.
Yeah, it was definitely between that two somewhere for sure. Yeah, fine.
All right. And your final question from listener Ryan P. What wonder of the world is Radiator Springs?
Oh.
This information passed through my brain at least once.
Yeah.
Because if you took world history in high school, you probably heard of the 7 wonders of the world.
I can't remember if it's the 8th or the 9th.
I'm going to say the 9th because for some reason that sounds more accurate
I'll
to
give
me.
you a hint. It might not be a whole number.
Of course not. Well, it's not 9 3/4. That is the wrong studio. Oh, dang it. I don't know car stuff enough. It's got to be some sort of like
Related to some type of car measurement.
Mm-hmm.
You want to hear something surprising? You probably won't think it's that surprising.
I'm going to say 8.5.
Yeah, I'll say 8.5 as well. Something that you might find surprising, but maybe not, is James and I started watching Drive to Survive, which is a documentary series that they've done a bunch of years about Formula One racing. Actually, Formula One is super fascinating, and I can't believe I'm saying that.
Interesting. So you should know the car hint that's there.
Maybe. I don't want to go sit and watch a whole Formula One race, but all of the stuff that goes around it is super fascinating. Anyway, that's all I got, Vern.
All right.
All right. So 8.5 from both of you. Alrighty. Well, listeners, how do you think they did? How did you do? Do you have all the answers? Do they have all the answers? If you stick around, we can all find out together.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why drivers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Well, for this week's discussion, we continue our conversation with Imagineer Kevin Rafferty. All right, well, we're gonna back up and go back because that's, we've been talking about the later part of your career. We're gonna go back to the front. So you started, it's fascinating, right? You started as a dishwasher on Main Street at the Plaza Inn. So my first question is, do you still enjoy going to the Plaza Inn, or did you kind of...
What a question. What a question.
Or you're kind of like, nope, too much.
That's the greatest question of the day. That is so awesome. I enjoy going to the Plaza Inn because I'm on the guest side of it, and I'm not on the dishwashing side of it and the back side of it. Not that it isn't great back there, and the people aren't great and everything, but I do enjoy going to the Plaza Inn. In fact, last time I was at the park, my one of my dearest friends and colleagues, Robert Coltrane, who he became a Disney legend, I think the year you guys were out at D23.
Oh, yeah.
Robert and I came up with a lot of attractions together. We worked on Raider Springs Racers and Midway Mania, and we did Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh at the Magic Kingdom of Florida. We worked on a lot of stuff together, so we're pretty close. And he retired a couple of years before I did. But Patty, my wife, and I met Robert and his friend Gary. Oh, what was I? I'm trying to remember when it was. It was not too long ago. And I said, where do you guys want to eat? And everybody said, Plaza Inn. So, yep, we all went to the Plaza Inn. And it was so funny because we sat at a table that was right next to the door, then went back to the dish room. And I said, do you guys want a tour? And they said, no.
I just can't even imagine. That's one of our favorite places, the Plaza Inn, but I just can't even imagine how many dishes.
Well, can you imagine how big? I mean, if you think about it, let's go to a day in July.
Yeah.
From park opening to park close, and there's a line out the door down to Main Street all day. Can you imagine how many dishes?
Yeah,
I think one day
many.
I tried to calculate, I think back in those days I was making like $1.73 an hour or some crazy thing, right? And I was trying to calculate the amount of dishes that I washed in an hour and what that translated into. It's like I made minus 2 cents a dish or something like that.
Too funny.
Wow.
But I did read your book. I don't just have it on display here.
Well,
we did read
you.
your book, which was fantastic. And for those that haven't, highly, highly recommend. So it's called Magic Journey, My Fantastical Walt Disney Imagineering Career. And in there, so it wasn't just at the Plaza Inn that you worked when you were at Disneyland. So can you kind of talk about your transition through the park and what other very special places you got to work in?
Yes, indeed. And it was a special place. I was able to, this is funny. I had a choice. I had put enough time in foods to have a choice to transfer out into a different department. And I could have gone into ride operations, which I would have loved to have done in a heartbeat, washing all the dishes. I would love to go over and work on Autopia or anywhere, But an opportunity came up. It seems like every time I started a job at Disneyland, it was always at the bottom of what it was. But it always ended up being a great learning and growing experience.
Mm-hmm.
So an opportunity came up at Club 33, the private club upstairs in New Orleans Square. And so I kind of took that. I don't know why I didn't have any restaurant experience, but in the time, but I have to tell you guys, I'm a very, 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 very hard worker. In fact, I remember coming home from work when I was a kid from the dish room, and I looked like I got run over by 10 trucks.
Oh, gosh.
And my dad said, rough day, huh? And I said, yeah, it's really hard. He says, you know what, son? He said, the only time you're going to find success before work is in the dictionary. And so every time I started at the ground floor, I remember those words. And it was great because I worked so hard at the club, and I went through every single job there. I started as a busboy, and I also subbed when the dishwasher didn't show up. I also watched, it's a much smaller dish machine, but I washed dishes there. But busboy, I ended up becoming a waiter. I was trained to be a wine steward. I was trained to be a bartender. The bar was not on stage in those days. The club looks differently today. I was back there recently to walk through it, and it's just way different looking. And then I became a lead, which is like assistant manager. So after being a waiter, I was made into a lead. And it was funny because I remember I was enjoying it so much and getting to know the guests there so much. And there were a lot of celebrities that were members, and a lot of people would come in. And it was just fun to be up there because it was very relaxing. And then you could go out on the little balconies and watch the fireworks. And I was there during the time Big Thunder was under construction. So it was kind of fun to watch that happen out the window. And one of the servers' husband was working on, from the Disneyland side, was working on Big Thunder. So it was fun to hear her stories through him on how the progression was going and all that. But it was really a lot of fun to work at the club. And then I remember getting up really early and going to Sunday buffets, and we had a really talented chef from Paris named Daniel Durand, and he taught me a lot. I ended up being a sous chef back in the kitchen and preparing a lot of the things. And I remember I actually learned how to cook at the club, and I made everything just perfectly and meticulously, and it was really a lot of fun. And then when I interviewed up at WED Enterprises at the time, I was an assistant manager, a lead at Club 33. And when they gave me the job at WED, which was almost 50 miles away from where I lived in Anaheim, I had to take a cut in pay to get my job at WED Enterprises at the time and drive 100 miles round trip to do it in a car that I never knew was going to make it 10 miles down the road. So that was, I took a lot of chances over the years. But, I went from, wearing a tuxedo and hobnobbing with everybody in the club. And then another funny story that happened there was one of the members was Bobby Sherman. You remember Bobby Sherman? He was a teen idol in the 70s. And my wife said that when she was smaller, she had posters of Bobby Sherman in her room. She lived in Anaheim, too, right behind actually Walt Disney School, where she actually met Walt Disney.
Cool.
But I got to know Bobby Sherman, and he had, I think, 2 nephews with him that day. And I said, Bobby, you're going out into the park? And he said, no, I think we're just here for lunch. We're going to leave. And I said, my girlfriend, she wasn't my wife at the time. I said, my fiance is standing out in front right now of the Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. And you can't miss her. Blonde hair. She's wearing a golden gown and she's standing there out front. Just and you're going to walk by and exit anyway. Just walk by and say, hi, Patty. He goes, oh, yeah, that'll be fine. I'd love to do that, right? So as they were exiting the park, they decided to go inside to see Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, and they all had soft drinks in their hands, and she didn't recognize them, and she gave them a hard time because they weren't allowed to bring food and drink into the exhibit, right? So she goes, she called me later, I can't believe it. I yelled at Bobby Sherman. So a lot of fun things happened at the club.
That's too funny.
and outside the club afterwards.
Yeah.
You set your future wife up for that whole situation.
Oh, and that's, began a long string of many of those kinds of things that happened.
Too funny.
Oh.
All right. So we're transitioning from Club 33 to your first gig at WED Enterprises. So what was your first role when you first started? Because again, you kind of said you started at the bottom and worked your way up.
I started at the bottom. So again, I had these grand dreams of going up because the poster backstage at Disneyland said we're looking for designers and artists, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Graduated with an art degree, and I said, I'm it, right? Yeah. So I go up there, and it was pouring rain that day. I had an old beat up Fiat convertible with a torn convertible top. Oh. And I remember I didn't even own a suit. So I spent all of my, hard-earned money at Disneyland buying this suit. And I was soaked like a wet rat getting out of that car that day. And my new shoes went into a big puddle of water. But they were really gearing up to work on 2 major projects, what they were calling Epcot Center at the time and Tokyo Disneyland. Mm-hmm. And they had 4 trailers set up out in front of 1401 Flower, where the headquarters is. And I was going to meet a recruiter in one of the trailers, and I brought my portfolio, my art portfolio, because I knew they wanted to see it, and they didn't even want to see it. And they said I was very fortunate because I was one of the last people they were hiring for this big push to design Epcot. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to be a designer. I'm going to help design a Disney park. And they said, we'll call you next week with an answer. And I thought it went pretty well, and I'm driving home with my wet portfolio, thinking, why didn't they look at my portfolio? Oh, my manager from the club must have called them and put in a good word for me because that's all it took, Oh, it's great to know people, and that wasn't it at all. I didn't know anybody at WED Enterprises. I didn't know anybody there. So they did call me the following week, and they offered me a job, but it wasn't what I expected. It was what was called a special services. I forgot the exact title, but essentially what that meant was I wasn't going to be an artist myself. My job was to support the real artists and designers who were designing Epcot Center and Tokyo Disneyland. And what that meant was many things. I would empty trash cans and set up conference rooms for their meetings. And I would dry mount and mat their concept art and, cut frames around them. So my workspace had this big table with an X-Acto blade and dry mounting tissue. And the artists would come down and they would have me dry mount their art so they could do presentations and things like that. And back in those days, by the way, WED, which is now Imagineering, you could smell the linseed oil. You could smell the oil paint upstairs where all the artists were. Now everything's digital, but then there were paintbrushes and there was, it was on canvases and there was flat boards or there, but yeah, it was, as I mentioned, I had to take a 50 cent an hour cut and pay to do this job. And it wasn't anywhere near the job that I thought it was going to be, but I bit the bullet and started doing it. And to my earlier point about learning a lot and the benefits of doing something I didn't want to start doing, the artists that came in that had me dry mount all of their concept art were the people that designed and developed Disneyland.
Yeah.
And so where my workstation table was right in the heart of the 1401 Flower Building, which I called the mothership of Imagineering. And right next to that was the big, giant model shop where they had a giant model that they were just starting of Epcot. Well, anyway, in my little space, all these artists like Herbie Ryman and Sam McKim and John Hench and Claude Coates and Colin Campbell, and I mean, all of them would come in and they would bring in their fresh hand-drawn, hand-painted, hand-sketched art. But they were so excited about it.
Incredible.
I would be the first one that would hear about what this was. These were things that management hadn't even seen yet.
Yeah.
These were fresh ideas that these guys, and I always said, you guys are so lucky because you get to visualize what these things look like. You're the first ones to get to see what these things look like because you're designing them. Mm-hmm. And so they thought that was cool. But I remember Herbie Ryman especially was one of my favorites because he was always just so full of life and energy. And he'd come in with something, something he painted on a board, the American Adventure or something. He'd say, Kev, okay, I have something for you to mount. Now what this is a thing called American Adventure. And what happens inside? And he would pitch the whole thing. I'm just this guy who was mounting his art, and they would just come in one after another, and I would cut mats for them and help them with their presentation, setting up conference rooms and stuff. And they were so excited about talking about these things. And then I had them kind of parlay stories into some of the things they did at Disneyland when they were designing them. Like Harper Goff was there, and he would come in and tell me about his trials and tribulations of doing the Jungle Cruise. Yeah. Harper, I heard those stories directly from Harper and what happened. And it's funny because Leslie Iwerks, who's a dear friend of mine, she just did Disneyland Handcrafted,
which is beautiful, by the way.
Yeah, and before it came out on Disney Plus, she was premiering it at the Disney Studio, and she said, Kev, you want to come and be my guest to come and see it? I said, are you kidding? Of course I do, And so I got to go to the studio and see Disneyland Handcrafted, the first run of it, with a bunch of people at the Disney Studio movie theater there. But what blew my head apart was that hearing these stories from the people that built this park, real stories from them, not secondhand or read in books or anything like that, come to life on the screen and actually see these, because they had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of silent footage that Walt wanted documented with, good quality cameras.
Yeah.
And Leslie went over the archives and started mining through all this kind of stuff nobody had ever seen. And I'd sit there and say, Harper was right. There's that thing that he was talking about to me years ago, so it was almost like, going back into my history at at WED Enterprises on that film and watching all these moments, like Bob Gurr with the Zootopia car and Roger Broggie, son Michael Broggie, who's a good friend of mine, was the kid in the Utopia car backstage at the studio on Leslie's documentary, and Bob was telling him how to drive the car. And I said, "Oh man, you're like the luckiest kid that ever lived." And he said, "Yeah, you know what I used to do? I used to drive over to where they were doing the Mickey Mouse Club, and I used to take the Mouseketeers on rides, and then I got in trouble for it, and this is before they put, governors on the Utopia cars, and he would haul through the studio." But anyway, that was, so the point is that I was in the heart of the building where everything was happening. I was like doing work for all the people that were actually designing Epcot, and many of them had designed Disneyland. I was getting to know some of the new designers like Joe Rohde and people like that who were just coming in at the time, and to see, the stuff that they were doing. And so even though, it was very entry level, I took a cut and pay to do it. There was nothing about it that was, I don't want to say special about the job itself, but what was special was getting to know the first generation of Imagineers. That was amazing. That was truly amazing. So, I don't know if a lot of people would have accepted that job or that pay rate at the time, but to me, that was priceless.
Well, I think so. 100%. I think your experiences that you had were priceless. I mean, who else could say that? I mean, you're talking about that you were envious of these people who, like, they got to create these things and the first people to think of it, but you were the first person outside of their brain that got pitched. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, you were also in a very fortunate position, and you were talking about handcrafted. And I was thinking when I watched it, the kid that was in that, I was like, that kid's really lucky. He got to ride it before it was ever in the park. Like,
exactly.
Like,
that was Michael Broggie. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Crazy.
I'm also just sitting here thinking about like all of the now priceless pieces of art that you have touched being in that, in that space, and all of the different things that I'm sure never made it very far past you mounting it because nope, we're not going to go with that. We're going to go with something else. And all these things are now, we're lucky and like we feel so fortunate to go to like museums and see these things on display, and that was just part of your everyday.
Part of my everyday. And it's funny because I think I did that for almost 2 years, and that was right at the time when the place was a beehive of activity. It was just in the early design phase of Epcot. They hadn't broken ground yet. There was still a lot going on. Things were changing. Things were moving around. But you're right. I was like, essentially, I was the first guy these people would pitch to before they even did their pitch to anybody else, because they'd come from downstairs where the linseed oil smell of the oil paint, all that, and they'd say, "Okay, here's the latest thing. Let's get this thing dry mounted," and then they say, "Well, what this is," and I was like the first guy to hear about these things. It was just, even the architects would come down and have their building facility sketches and stuff mounted. And I remember, doing the Italy pavilion and the Germany pavilion. I mean, I was like the first guy besides them to ever see this stuff.
That's crazy. I think that you had like the best job.
You did.
I think I did, but nobody knew it at the time. Everybody had the worst job.
Yeah.
I pulled a fast one on them, I'll tell you that.
So, which begs the question now. So how did you go from that position to working, to being one of these folks?
Well, it's funny. Today, it wouldn't work like it did in my generation, because I was one of these kids. Like I said, I was a very, very hard worker, and I loved Disney. So, and I wasn't negative. I was always very positive, because I was happy to be there. I truly was. I mean, this is just like the most amazing thing ever.
I mean, if I had Imagineers pitching stuff to me, I would also be happy.
Right. But then there was, to answer your question, there was a vice president of creative development who worked under Marty. His name was Randy Bright. And he comes from Disneyland. He worked on the Columbia ship. Mm-hmm. And Randy was a writer as well. And Randy is the person that actually wrote the American Adventure Show and coordinated the music with Golden Dreams and did all that kind of stuff. And so one of Randy's jobs was concept development, was to come up with ideas and things like that. So I bring up Randy because he was really, a lot of people think it was Marty, but it was really, really Randy Bright who brought me into creative. And the way that happened was I was approached to work in the scope writing department. which was very unique to Wed Enterprises at the time. It wasn't even in creative. In fact, when I had my interview at Wed to begin with, and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I'd love to work in the creative division that I've heard about." And they kind of giggled and said, "Yeah, like that chance kind of thing, right?" Anyway, so this was part of the project management department. So it was part of the estimating department. And what a scope was, it was a 3-ring binder document that was kind of the encyclopedia of every fresh day that happened in the week, of all the changes and things for every pavilion at Epcot.
Wow.
And so there were 2 of us in the whole department. There was a guy that was a scope writer named Mark Rhodes, who I also attribute to helping me get into the creative department, because somehow Mark transitioned into the creative department as well, which left this opening. And he recommended me to take this job. And I was an artist. I wasn't a writer, but I didn't find out until later that I really am a writer and a storyteller. But I thought it was the art that was the vehicle that got you there. But no, it really wasn't. And so I had an interview with the head of project management to be a scope writer. And he said, "Well, can you write?" And I said, "Well, of course I can write, and well, can you do this and that?" And I guess he could see my excitement about, the project happening and being there and stuff like that. And he said, "Well, do you want to work as a scope writer?" And I said, "Absolutely." And so what that meant was I would have to start. So not only did the designers and the artists pitch all of their stuff to me when I was mounting them, now I got to go to their meetings, their concept meetings, and record. My place wasn't to say anything or to contribute, but I did record a lot of their design thoughts and things. Well, if we did this and did that. So my job was, imagine the enormity of this job with all the pavilions at Epcot. I didn't work on anything Tokyo Disneyland. There was another scope writer named Steve Nassetti that did that. But imagine Epcot, every single pavilion, every shop, every restroom. I don't know how many stalls there were. I don't know how many drinking fountains there were. Every detail about every pavilion, ride systems, lineal feet of track, amount of ride vehicles, conveyance systems, dispatch intervals. I had to stay on top of that. So you can imagine my days every day talking with the designer saying, well, is the dispatch interval still 12.8 seconds? And because basically everybody in the company, Wed Enterprise at the time, would go to the scope for, let's say, the Horizons Pavilion and open it up and see, how many square feet the facility was, how many restrooms, what the ride vehicles were. And I would kind of show pictures of the designs in there and stuff like that. So I was a great job, but I put so many hours in every day to keeping all those things fresh, because they had to be as fresh as could be, to reflect all the changes. And then the reason why I was in the estimating department is because the estimators would take my scope and estimate, oh, well, this has, this much square footage, and this has these vehicles, and it would provide them a vehicle to be able to provide an estimate for the project budget. Well, after so many creative meetings, and Randy Bright was in a lot, he could see me squirming in the corner. As I said, it wasn't my place to say a word, and I had much admiration and respect for everybody in the room. My place was to take notes so that I could go back to my office and reflect the changes. And one day, out of the blue, Randy Bright looks at me and he says, "Kev, what do you think?" And every head in the room looks at me like, who's this kid, And he said, "Okay, go on. What do you think?" And I said something that he really liked, so what I was thinking, I said, "Boy, if it were me, I would do this." And I said that, and Randy says, "I like that. Let's do that." And so subsequent meetings that happened with Randy Bright, I could see him looking at me. And then he would, at certain times, certain intervals, he would say, "Kev, what do you think of that?" And so people started to get used to that. Well, this happened for about, I don't know, almost a year of being a scope writer.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, maybe, Randy's liking some of the suggestions I have, maybe he'll bring me into creative. And then Randy started calling me into his office, and he'd say stuff like, he just to test me and see what I would think. He would say, "I'm working on this idea for like the show starring Mickey, and he's a sorcerer's apprentice. And, maybe he appears, on top of Sleeping Beauty Castle, and this, giant maleficent dragon comes up from the moat and he fights the forces of evil and all." So this was the beginnings of Phantasmic. Or he would say, River Country at Walt Disney World is so busy, we really need to think about another water family type park. He said, I was thinking about, like this freak storm that happens, this typhoon that comes in and turns everything topsy-turvy. And he said, I'm thinking about, could you come up with some of the names for these attractions and maybe, what the stories behind them were and stuff. Now, what you have to realize was I still had my full-time job doing scopes, which was like a triple job.
Yeah.
But I was working now for Randy on my own time at nights and on the weekends. So Randy would start throwing these assignments at me and say, can you come up with a name for the shop that does the thing? Can you come up with a backstory for this one thing, this Hammerhead Fred's thing? And so he would just lob things at me, just arbitrarily. And then he would always like what I came up with. And then I said, you know what, I had enough guts. I'm going to go into Randy's office and say, can you bring me into creative so I can not do scopes anymore and so I can do this stuff? Because I really love doing this stuff.
Yeah.
And I knocked on his office door and he said, you're the person I wanted to see. And I'm thinking, he's going to give me another, boatload of work to do. And he says, how would you like coming over to the creative department as a show writer? And it's like my knees buckle up at the floor, right? So I kind of went from dishwasher to Club 33 to an entry-level position to kind of another entry-level position with the estimating department, finally into creative. And so Randy, Mark Rose really before that, but Randy opened the door for me to get into creative. And I worked on a lot of stuff with Randy. And then my first show on my own was in the late 80s, a Pan-Galactic Pizza Port at Tokyo Disneyland. And then, everything subsequent to that happened. And it was just, I don't know if it was because I was in the right place at the right time, because of the timing of the project needs that were happening. Like, for example, when we opened the Disney Hollywood Studio Park in Florida, it just needed more attractions. When it opened, it needed more attractions. So we just went crazy, just coming up with ideas. And, you guys mentioned the Muppets earlier. And that's where we approached Jim Henson and his team and said, hey, can we get together and start thinking about a theatrical kind of a 3D show that we can do starring the Muppets? It'd be a perfect vehicle for this. And we could film it and get it in probably, within 2 years. And we need to start getting more attractions in here really quickly. And that's kind of how that happened. So from the time I got off of Pan-Galactic Pizza Port, it just never stopped. The waterfall kept flowing on me, which was wonderful. And then because of the nature of projects, you would have different attraction and show ideas happening in different phases of development all at the same time. So you'd be starting on something early on and then, would lead to something else, doing something completely else, but you're still doing the early on stuff on this. So I was spinning plates like all day and I loved every minute of it. I don't know where I had all the energy to do it, but just the excitement of doing it. So that's kind of how that happened.
I was going to say you were passionate about it. That's why. So it wasn't work, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I loved every minute of it.
If you were to estimate how many attractions you had a hand in, or maybe you actually know the answer, what would you say?
I don't know the answer. I've never really counted them up. I mean, quite a few.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's a difference between attractions that I helped to design and develop that were, existing ideas like Rock and Roller Coaster, to attractions that I kind of conceived myself or with my creative partner in crime, Robert Coltrane, like Radiator Springs Racers and Midway Mania. And then Robert came in to help me lay out the show spaces for Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway.
Oh, cool.
So that was another one that was a brand new, fresh idea. Someday I should sit down and count them up. I never really, but there's lots of shows too. Like I did the original Comedy Warehouse show at Pleasure Island early on.
Oh, yeah.
And there's so many, I wrote the menu for Trader Sam's, hippopotami tie and all that. I mean, there's so many little incidental jobs. It's just hard to put a number to.
Plus all the windows.
And the windows and the plaques and, it's
that's wild. Because it's one of those things that, right, going to the theme park and experience it, you notice all of these things, but you kind of, again, forget that, like, somebody had to do, like, that was somebody's job. Someone created this.
It doesn't just happen.
It didn't just happen.
And to that point, I remember being a kid and, when for example, when the Matterhorn opened and when the monorail and the sub lagoon, everything opened in 1959. Oh, cool. Disneyland came up with some new attractions. Well, I called them rides at the time, but I learned to call them attractions. And I always thought that somehow Disneyland magically came up with these new attractions. And I know on the Wonderful World of Disney, Walt used to talk about his Imagineers at WED, and he would always, show footage of them doing different things. And Harriet Burns in the model shop, who actually worked right next to me when I was working in special services.
Oh.
And so I remember her from TV and things. So yeah, it was, I don't know how many.
Countless. Well, especially if you're doing like menus and all that stuff. That's just never would I've thought that the same person would be designing attractions and creating different fun things that are now on menus to then that's entertainment shows. And that's so cool.
Well, that's just it. I remember when my friend and colleague accepted during his speech when he became a Disney legend at D23. I thought his speech was so beautiful, and he said, a lot of you may not know who I am, but that's because Imagineers, it's not like the movie industry where you get your name on credits.
Mm-hmm.
Marty always used to tell us there's only one name on the door, and it's Walt Disney.
Yeah.
Leave your ego outside. Nobody takes credit for anything. And so unless you're super fans, most park guests have no idea who did what, when, unless you get a lot of exposure, like people like Joe Rohde and others like that.
Yeah.
But most people don't know who did what. And that's okay, because it just makes it, I think it makes it better because somehow they magically were created and you get to enjoy them now.
I just wrote this down, and then you kind of are making this point, which is I remember as a kid that, like, when the Disney Channel was like a new thing, late at night, they would always show reruns of the old stuff. And some of the old stuff that I really enjoyed was like these specials that Walt would do showing, the Disneyland TV show did that, but they also had like a 10th anniversary special. There's that famous, the 10th anniversary special where he's walking Julie Ream through showing off pirates and a little bit of what's coming with the Haunted Mansion and all of these things. Yep. And I feel like the Walt Disney Company and Imagineering went from that to kind of like showing what they're working on, which I think is like a really intriguing part of the story, to a time where it didn't seem like any of that was put out there. And now I feel like we're getting back to a time on YouTube. Imagineering, the Imagineering YouTube channel puts out, we call it Imagineering, and they talk about all these things. So like, what do you think about the fact that like they're kind of opening the curtain again to kind of show, because I had this epiphany watching, we call it Imagineering, that Disney is not just like an entertainment company. They're also a technology company, especially with the stuff they're doing now.
Yeah. Oh, huge. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. I think it's great, the little kind of teasers that they do and the YouTube videos and things like that now. I mean, the world today with social media and with television, everything. I mean, back in the day when Walt was introducing Disneyland in, the 50s on black and white TV, most people didn't even have a TV, but the world was a much, much bigger place then. And now it's a lot smaller. Mm-hmm. And Bruce Vaughan, who's now the president of Walt Disney Imagineering, kind of started in R&D, and his big thing is technology. Of course, he's a great creative person and a storyteller, but his heart is on technology and how technology can help tell the story. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's interesting. We always like to say, for an attraction to be successful, you really have to start with the story, and then the technology will follow, like Mater going backwards every 10.8 seconds and talking and things like that. But things like Star Tours started with, a radiodiffusion company flight trainer that was repurposed. So a lot of technology happened that way. But what I love most about Imagineering is that if the technology or an adaptation of that technology doesn't exist out there for a different use than it was intended for, like robotic arms that are intended to build cars, but now they're ride vehicles kind of thing, Imagineering invents it. There are so many inventions that happen, and the guys at R&D and the guys that build the figures and all that, and they're so excited about coming up with new stuff. But of course, from my perspective, and as much as I admire the technology and appreciate it and need it to help tell our stories, it absolutely requires the technology, because we couldn't tell any of our stories without it. My favorite thing is when all of that goes away, because you're so immersed in the story that you don't even think about the technology, right? Yeah. Technology people, like you may look at it differently about, how the technology works. But to me, the most magical part is when it goes away. But when guests or audiences see that on TV or see that on YouTube and get little glimpses into it, it kind of serves the same purpose of what Walt wanted to do is he wanted to get people excited about coming to see it when it was finished. So my only caveat on that is I don't like a lot of it given away. I don't like, it's like, a filmmaker would not tell you the end of the story and, all that kind of stuff. He might be interviewed or she might be interviewed and talk about certain things, aspects of the movie and performers and things like that. But as long as there's enough just to wet your whistle and to get theme park guests excited and technology people excited, and then everybody wins, right? Everybody wins.
I really love it. I feel like that's something I've missed from the Walt era, is that the little glimpse, because it seemed like for a while Disney got so protective of, because of competition and stuff, that like, well, if we announce that we're doing this or we show too much, then somebody might beat us to the punch or try to steal it from us or whatever. And I'm like, Disney, Universal's doing some great stuff too, but Disney has, the Disney touch, right? That you can't, that another company can't just recreate.
Well said. I mean, they may have a lot of the same technology or use a lot of the same technology and a lot of things like that, but nobody can and I'm speaking kind of from a selfish perspective, but nobody can replicate what Disney can deliver regarding, entertainment and immersive entertainment. And there's a heart to it, as I mentioned earlier. There's a big heart to it, and there's kind of the the overquoted term of Disney magic. There's just something about it that I think one of our best attributes is being able to come up with attractions that every age can enjoy together.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some theme park companies that all they want to do is just slam you around all day, and that eliminates a lot of your audience. So
well, and I don't think people don't always think that, because when you think of like theme parks, you think of those like crazy roller coasters, and people are like, oh no, I don't do rides.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no.
Right.
This is more about, it's more about the storytelling than it is the actual like thrill of going fast and loop-de-loops and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I mean, obviously Disney has done that. We have a couple of those attractions at places, but the story is just that for those, like the Incredicoaster, there is a story, but it's kind of more of the afterthought because you don't have time to really know, what's going on because you're being blasted through.
But then you get the opposite, where you get things. Now, I haven't ridden it, and I don't think you've ridden it yet either. But like the Guardians coaster, there is a whole story that goes along with that.
Yeah.
It just happens to take place on a roller coaster, and it's been designed in such a way that you can, because of the technology of turning you and stuff, you can absorb that story, and that the roller coaster of it does fall away to the story.
One of the things to that point, one of the things that I learned early on as a kid at Imagineering was that, the guests really are a camera. If you were to look, filmmakers were the original Imagineers, right? And if you were to look at an attraction as your guest being the camera, and with audio cues and visual cues, you have to tell them where to look as the camera, right? And so that ride vehicle gives you the ability to turn them exactly. It's like the Doom buggies in the Haunted Mansion. It gives you the ability to be a camera person and to tell your audience where they're looking, but in a physical space. So there's a real art to that.
I think the coolest thing too, that as being a theme park fan and someone that gets to experience these attractions over and over again, I really find a lot of fun and enjoyment in trying to look just off of where they're trying to get me to look, because then it's a whole different experience story. You notice different things, even though you've been on this attraction, countless times. You get to see all these different things, which then like turns into, I think Imagineers are having more fun with doing that stuff, and they kind of hide things in plain sight. So then you get to take in all of these fun little Easter eggs and different layers of things.
That's an excellent point, because you have to cover your bases from a 360-degree perspective. If your guests can turn their heads and look behind them, you got to cover that too. And like Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, it's not only an A story on that attraction from beginning to end, but we have the B story of the dutiful dog Pluto trying to get the picnic basket to Mickey and Minnie through the whole thing. And like you said, if you happen to glance as you're going out one scene and the other, you see Pluto running in the distance with a picnic basket. He's in every scene. You may not always see him.
There you go. Now you know.
Yeah.
I got to look for that.
So speaking of Easter eggs, I wrote this down. So many Easter eggs and fun little things in Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway that, like, you could probably just sit on that attraction all day and still not catch all of them, because I feel like there's just so many layers, which is just so fun.
That's right. There's more than I even know.
There's so many cool. I know that like the technology falls away, but I'm like the nerd. So one of these things that gets me is the first time I rode. It's a Universal attraction. I'm sorry, but like when I rode the Harry Potter attraction,
right?
The first
journey.
2 times I rode that, I could not figure out how it worked. And so the third time I rode it, I sat at the end, and most of the attraction, I was trying to look out the back and the side, trying to see, because I could not wrap my head around how this was working, and I really needed to figure it out. Because unlike Teresa, who she just enjoys the magic, I am like, I want to know how they did this. So like, I would be an Imagineer type person because I'd love to know all the workings. I'm the guy who goes and watches a magic show and is like, now I want them to tell me how they did all of that. Like,
of course,
because that'll be just as cool for me. But with Mickey and Minnie's, what's so cool is like things like while you're loading, the ride vehicles are charging, right? Like there's like a little charging pad.
That's
like
right.
That's a cool idea of like to be able to do this. And I don't know, it's just all the technology that goes into stuff that really, like you said, really helps tell the story.
Right.
Is so cool. And the sound, I still don't know how sound design works at any of the Disney attractions, because at home, if I have a speaker going, I can hear it all over the house. But I can move from here to 3 feet that way to Disney Park and I don't hear anything. And I'm just like, I don't know how this all works.
Well, sound design is huge in the attractions, as you can imagine. It's like I mentioned earlier, it's one of the cues that if something bangs over here, you want your guests to look over in that direction. But the surround of sound design, hiding speakers in certain show sets, not just, and imagine, Mater going backwards every 10.8 seconds. His voice has to go with him.
Oh, yeah.
And, Joe Harrington, who I work with on many attractions and showed it in sound design, just a brilliant guy. I worked with him, and he worked with me on Radiator Springs Racers. And I remember, as an example, is you never know what you're going to hear or see until you start loading the show in. And we started to load in the audio that we built in the studio at Imagineering and Radiator Springs Racers, and we got into the Luigi scene, the tire changing scene. And Joe and I are in there, and he's with his laptop with all the sounds downloading and everything. And I said, Joe, we're not feeling the tire change. I mean, you can hear and you can hear the tires dropping under you, but I want to feel, Guido underneath. I want to feel his workers underneath changing the tires. And so I remember we went out, it was still a construction site, and we went out and found some rebar laying around, and Joe's audio equipment was in this fiberglass case. And we went out there and recorded Joe thumping on the fiberglass case. And then we processed that and brought it back into the attraction and ran it through the subwoofers under the seat. So next time you're at Radiator Springs Racers and you're in the Luigi scene and you're getting your tires changed and you hear and you feel the thump, that's us in the afterthought, putting that in there so you could actually feel it.
Wow.
And then just one more story about audio design. My favorite attraction for audio design is Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. And the reason for that is because these days you can get any sound effect you want in a digital file. If you want to find an ambulance siren, if you want to find a door slamming, it's all digital. But because of the nature of Mickey and Minnie's, because it was Mickey, because it was a railroad, because it harkened back to the heritage of Disney, and because Jimmy McDonald, who was a dear friend of mine for many years, was the original voice of Mickey Mouse for 38 years, there were so many connections that we actually performed the sound effects on Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway all by hand, old school, like you would 50 years ago. We did it all old school. In fact, Jimmy one day was sad. He came to Imagineering and he said, fellas, I hear they're going to take all my sound effects and get rid of them. And these were all contraptions that he built in his garage over the years, canvas things that would create the sound of, the waves crashing and just different things like that. So Joe Harrington and Jimmy and I went over to the studio, and he kept everybody busy telling them stories. And we went and got a van filled with Jimmy's sound effects that he built over the years. We brought them back and locked them in a cage in Imagineering, and we used many of those for the sound effects for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. In fact, one of them that was part of that collection was the original tritone whistle from Steamboat Willie. So when he pulls the rope and you hear the toot toot, That's a tritone whistle. We use that very whistle, that same whistle, to create the locomotive sound blast as it's coming into the load station.
That's cool.
So many layers.
Yeah. So there's so many Disney connections, so many things that Jimmy's sound effects that he performed on were used in different TV shows and shorts and films and things like that we reused for Mickey and Minnie's, but nobody would know that all the sound, next time you go through, it's all performed by hand, all of it.
Wow. That's impressive.
You may not know the answer to this question, but I feel like I have to ask, since you might know the answer. One of my favorite sound effects, and I look forward to it and I've probably said it to you 100 times when we've read this thing. One of my favorite sound effects from the attraction is that clinking noise when the train takes off from the station. I love that noise. Do you know what is that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you that one.
He's just hiding the magic.
That's before my time. I don't know.
It's so good.
I don't know.
Yeah. I love that noise because it's like clink clinka and it goes and I'm like, oh, I love it. I just love it. Anyway.
Well, next time I see Michael Broggie, his dad was Roger Broggie who built those locomotives. I'll ask him, and I'll get back to you.
Well, we had so much fun talking with Kevin Rafferty that we are going to finish our conversation on next week's episode.
In episodes 222 and 338, we spoke with our friends Debbie and Steve with Designer Park Company about their rope drop, park view, and single rider bags and more that we use and love. If you've been wanting to get one of those park goer bags for yourself or one of their new pairs of very cozy, very shiny rhinestone ears, you can use our promo code DLWeekly to get 10% off your purchase at designerparkco.com.
Welcome back to Trivia Land, Shell. My name Raymond, and I hope them answers are bigger and better than this here back porch I got attached to me. Don't you know Evangeline and I wish y'all the best of luck.
Welcome back to Trivia Land, where we're going to find out the answers to tonight's questions, and we're going to see how Tag and Teresa, and of course how you, the listeners, did. Tag, Teresa, how you feeling?
Super confident is what we meant.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say you did your normal.
Well, so we didn't do well.
You did some good, you did some bad, you did some middle. I mean, you did okay. Let's find out together.
We did some.
Let's show.
You did. That's what you did. You did. Your first question from listener Keith N. In what novel was Toontown first mentioned? Both of you saying, Who Framed Roger Rabbit? The correct answer that I was looking for was the 1981 novel by Gary K. Wolfe, Who Censored Roger Rabbit?
Oh, you know what? Now that you say that, yes, I remember that now, but too late.
You were an infant. How do you remember that?
No, because I remember watching a documentary about Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and they said that the source book was Who Censored Roger Rabbit.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Like, we're the same age. We were infants when that came out. But no, I guess you can watch documentaries, yes.
Yeah.
Your second listener question from listener Serena K. What century has the most headstone representation at the Haunted Mansion? Both of you saying the 1800s. Now, this one, I gotta say, longtime listeners will know, we always like to verify the answers of questions. This one was a toughie. From what I was able to find, and from what the listener gave me, dates range from the 1500s to the 1800s. One of the earliest ones being, I believe, 1504, because it was supposed to represent the beginning of New Orleans, which is where, everything's supposed to take place. The most came from the 1800s.
Ooh.
With the majority, as far as I can tell, being inside the mansion itself. When you're actually in the queue, they're kind of more in like the 1700s. But once you're inside, that's when they start getting heavily 1800s focused.
I almost said 1700s, and then I was like, no.
That is the second place as far as we're able to establish. So thank you, Serena K., for a good, tough question.
Didn't have to turn my Haunted Mansion card in.
Your third listener-submitted question from Christy H. The Party Gras Parade was featured for which Disneyland anniversary? Tag said the 35th. Teresa said the 40th. Both of you knowing that it was sometime in the decade known as the 90s. This Party Gras Parade was complete with calypso and Latin music, stilt walkers, and 6 37-foot-tall inflatable Disney characters featuring Minnie Mouse, Roger Rabbit, Pluto, Goofy, Donald Duck, and Mickey Mouse. They were all dressed to party, except for Mickey, who was wearing his sorcerer costume, and it all took place in 1990 for the 35th anniversary.
Ooh, good job, Tag.
Because this was such a cool parade. I think it was only there for like the 1 year, but it was like giant, it was like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. They had these giant inflatable characters. It was amazing. But they weren't floating up like that, but they were inflatable like that.
Yeah, that's the 6 37-foot-tall inflatable Disney characters.
That's crazy.
I mean, that is almost a 4-story tall building. Like, when you just think about 37 feet tall, you're like, okay, whatever, 37, that's a number. No, that's almost 4 stories.
Okay, do you know what's nuts is seeing these inflatables going down Main Street and the size of them compared to the Main Street buildings.
Yeah.
Massive.
Wild.
Yeah, that Pluto was, like, obliterating the castle behind him. Yeah.
Well, that was
I mean,
forced
forced perspective, but still, I mean...
Like, look at these. Like, the angle here, they're Mickey and Donald are, like, in front of City Hall.
And they're the same height.
And they look like they're the same height as City Hall.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy.
It was a cool parade.
Wild. How fun.
Awesome. And your fourth and final listener-submitted question from listener Ryan P. What wonder of the world is Radiator Springs? Both of you saying the 8.5th. Wonder of the world number 8.5. The correct answer that I'm looking for is the 8 3/4.
Oh, man.
We're off by a quarter.
Not too bad.
Yeah. Just 0.25.
Dang it, I'm looking at this, too. I recognize this sign.
Yep.
Because it's made out of, like, 2, like, what do you call those? Lug nuts?
No, like wheel spokes.
No, these things are like a nut, nut and bolt.
It's just a nut. Yeah.
Yeah, the 8's made out of 2 nuts.
The 8, yeah. Yep.
Oh, man.
Yep.
We're going to have to turn in our Radiator Springs card to Kevin now that we've just talked to him.
Yep.
Sorry, Kevin.
Well, listeners, how do you think they did? How did you do listening at home or in your car, or on a walk with your dog, wherever it is that you listen? If you've got that perfect question that's going to really stump them next time, please feel free to send that in to us at dlweekly.net/trivia.
Well, we will be back next week with more Disneyland news and information.
Until then, go out and enjoy the parks.
A special thank you to Sidel for editing the podcast, Andy Mack for all the wonderful character transitions, and to James D. and Aaron C. for supporting at the Club 33 level.
Please remain seated until the podcast comes to a complete stop and the doors have opened. Then collect your belongings, watch your head, and step carefully from the episode. On behalf of all of our crew, thanks for traveling with us, and we hope you have a happy and memorable visit here at DL Weekly.
I sold my car in Carvana last night.
Well, that's cool.
No, you don't understand. It went perfectly. Real offer, down to the penny. They're picking it up tomorrow. Nothing went wrong.
So, what's the problem?
That is the problem. Nothing in my life goes as smoothly. I'm waiting for the catch.
Maybe there's no catch.
That's exactly what a catch would want me to think.
Wow, you need to relax.
I need to knock on wood. Do we have wood? Is this table wood?
I think it's laminate.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's close enough.
Car selling without a catch. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.